Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and as promised, this is the video where I will talk through how I created this platform pop-up card with no specialty dies for the pop-up mechanism. So this was the card that I showed. It was my pop-up card in my flip of the Spellbinders December club kits, and I'll show you how I came up with it. Let's go ahead and make this. Okay, so this piece here is what we're going to work on first. I am going to refer to it as the circular ring. And essentially, the height of this is completely arbitrary. That's up to you. Just depends on what you plan on putting on top of it. You just want to make sure that in combination with whatever you want to put on top of this, plus the height of this circular ring, that it will fit within your card. Then the next tricky thing to figure out is what size circle you need to cut. But essentially, the circular ring, it needs to be able to fold in half and still fit within your card base. So that's the key. So whatever size card you plan to make, you just need to make sure that half, that strip that makes up half of the circular ring, that it can fit within your card base. So I decided at the outset that I wanted to make a 6x6 card. So what I decided, and this is where I made a little bit of an error, but I'm going to tell you, how I made a mistake, and then you can avoid it. So I see how I just measured that. I gave myself a little tick mark, and it ended up being about 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut these into 5.5 by 1.5 inches. The 1.5 is the height of that circular ring, which again is totally arbitrary. But, so here's the thing. I forgot when I was measuring this against my card base, I forgot that I need to put a single glue tab on each of these two strips. So I'm actually going to score this by 1/2 inch, and then that glue tab, it's going to get folded in on itself. So this is actually 1/2 inch shorter than it needs to be. I could have gone 1/2 inch wider, and it would still fit within my card. So that would take it to, instead of cutting this at 5.5, I could have cut it at 6. So my overarching recommendation is if you want to maximize the size of the circle platform, just cut it to the width of your card base. And then once you take off that 1/2 inch glue tab, then it's going to definitely fit once it's folded. It will definitely fit into your card base. So if you want a rule of thumb, you can go with that. Just cut 2 strips that are the same width as your card base, score 1/2 inch on each of them as a glue tab, and then the height of it can be whatever you'd like. Then I cut myself 4 additional little glue tabs, so just about 1 inch by 1 inch. You can actually go not quite as wide as 1 inch. You could maybe even do like 1/2 inch by 1 inch if you wanted, and then just fold it in half. With these, I definitely want to use my bone folder to soften and curl those strips so that they start being trained to take on that circular shape, especially since my craft card is a little bit on the thicker side, so it needs to be coerced into that nice rounded shape. So using a bone folder, as I did, kind of like how you curl ribbon, that helps to soften the cardstock and the paper fibers, but then it also trains the cardstock to take that shape. So it will more naturally curve rather than kind of bend and fold at more angular or possibly even crack, which you definitely don't want to have happen. Then the next trickiest thing to do is to figure out what size circle you can fit into that circular ring. You could do the math to figure this out because essentially where I started out, I cut my strip to 5.5. I scored a 1/2 inch as a glue tab. So that means the actual part of the ring that is part of the circle is just 5 inches wide. And that's only half the circle. So my circle has a total circumference of 10 inches. So you could do the math to figure out what radius circle, or you could do what I'm doing here. I just measured a piece of twine, gave myself a little washi tape marker at 10 inches. I'm going to tape that to a circle die that I thought was maybe close enough. And I'm going to just hold it against my die, wrapping it around, and I'm going to figure out which size die is the best fit. So that's one way to easily do this. You don't have to bring out high school math if you don't want to. If you want to get more precise, certainly you could do that because you know the circumference is 10 inches. So you can do the math to figure out what the radius is and from there what the diameter is, and that'll help you to choose what size circle die you'll want to grab. This gave me a really good approximation, but what I want to do is actually a bit of a dry fitting just to make sure that I have the right size. Now, if at this point things are off, either the circle is too big or too small, there's still plenty I can do to correct it. But when things start to come together, it becomes a lot harder to correct if they don't fit together initially. So I definitely recommend, if you're not going to follow my exact measurements, so for example, if you want to do this for A2, and maybe I'll do another video where I'll figure out the measurements for A2. But for now, I just want to share conceptually how you can do this yourself and how you can figure it out yourself. So all I'm trying to do, it's a little bit of a challenge. The reason why I'm not gluing these two strips together is because I don't know yet if they are the right length. What if my circle is too big? What if it's too small? I don't want to start attaching or gluing anything down permanently when I haven't quite figured out whether it all will fit together. When I was finally able to kind of do that dry fitting where I hugged my circle with those two outer ring pieces, what I realized is that they are actually a little bit too long. And so what I ended up having to do to make it fit better is I ended up having to trim 1/8 of an inch off from the end that's 5 inches. So it's just essentially what I have is a section that's 4 7/8 wide, a score line at that mark, and then 1/2 inch as a glue tab. So once I trimmed off that 1/8 of an inch from both sides, because you want them to be identical because it has to be able to fold down flat. It has to be able to fold completely flat. And that worked out perfectly. So that's where you may need to kind of do a little bit of trimming here and there. Just make sure as you're trimming both sides equally, because everything has to be able to fold exactly in half in order for your card to fold close completely. So I've got my circle. I've got the two pieces that will make up the circular ring. Then we need a support, something that's going to support the circle platform, and that piece is going to go inside that circular ring. And I determined just by that string method that my circle needs to be a radius of 3 inches wide. So before I get to the support piece, What I'm gonna do is score this in half. So I know the circle is 3 inches wide, so I just need to score a line at 1.5. Then I'm gonna line up that 1.5 inch score line on my cutting track. And I just kind of eyeballed, what was center. And then I made a little bit of a slit right in the middle, not through the outer edge. You want the slit in the center, in the middle of your circle. Had I thought about it a little bit more carefully, I actually would have made that slit a little bit more towards one end, because then the couple that is sitting on or standing or dancing on top of this platform, then they would be a little bit more centered, because she's the only one who is attached to the platform. He's not attached to it at all. So it would have been better if she was a little bit more off to the side, and then as a couple, they would be more centered. But I still like how it turned out. So this piece here is one of two that will be identical, and I cut it to the same diameter as my circle, but to be honest, I would recommend, and when I do this a second time, I'm actually going to go maybe about 1/4 inch more narrow. So my piece here measures, well, to be honest, I was using scraps, but it does measure 3 inches wide. And what I would recommend is that you, whatever height your platform is, to make it the same height, and then give yourself 1/2 inch glue tabs on both sides. So the height of my platform is 1.5 inches. So I would cut this to 2.5 inches, and along the 2.5 inch edge, score 1/2 inch on both sides. So that's going to give me, 2 glue tabs, and then essentially this brace or the support for my platform is going to be the same height as that outer ring. And mine looks a little bit off because, like I said, I was just using up some scraps, which you're welcome to do. The 1/2 inch glue tab, if you want to do 1/4 inch glue tabs, that's fine. That's totally up to you. What I would recommend doing, because I didn't do this, and it shows, you can see it on the final card, I always do this, but I don't know why I forgot to miter the corners on those glue tabs. I always do that. And if you watch a lot of my videos, you know that I always miter corners on my glue tabs. Why did I forget? I think for me, I was just trying to figure out how everything goes together, because it's been a while since I've made one of these. I have never done it from scratch myself, but I do have a die set, a Sizzix die set that does this cake pop-up mechanism. And then I bought the Made to Surprise die set that's even larger. And I bought the Made to Surprise one because I just wanted a variation in different sizes. And I haven't even used that yet. I've only made the cake one once, maybe twice. And so conceptually, I'm familiar with how this all sort of goes together in terms of the mechanics of it, but I've never made a custom one myself. And I could have saved myself some money by not buying those additional die sets, but I'm glad I have it. It will make it certainly a lot faster and a lot more simple. But you don't need those specialty dies if you don't plan to make a lot of these and you just want to kind of dabble and make one or make a very custom one. So here are all the pieces that I have for my 6x6. And granted, this is a little bit smaller than I could have gone. I could have gone a little bit larger than this. I've got the platform support pieces that are 3 inches wide by 2.5 tall, and I've scored it along the 2.5 inch edge at 1/2 inch on both sides or both ends. That I would recommend being a little bit more narrow than the diameter of your circle. So had I to do it over again, instead of 3 inches, I would have gone maybe 2 3/4. The next two pieces are the outer ring of the circle. Those are both cut to that same height of 1.5 inches. I've cut mine to 5.5 inches, and I scored it at what ends up being 4 7/8. and I have two of those. My circle is a 3-inch diameter circle, so from edge to edge it measures 3 inches. I've got a little bit of about a half-inch slit on that score line, and then I've got some glue tabs that are 1 inch by 1 inch, scored and folded in half. Those can be more narrow. I would suggest maybe instead of half an inch wide, maybe 5/8 of an inch. Even half an inch would probably be okay. And then I've got some strong acetate. You want really stiff acetate, so either a really stiff, thick plastic. Well, really, it depends actually on what you plan on attaching to your pop-up mechanism, or in that pop-up stand, I mean. So if you're going to attach a lot of things to it, and a lot of things that are heavy, like foam, for example, like a foam dot and more foam, then you need that to be really strong. So I would recommend either doubling up on your acetate or finding some pretty thick plastic. But if you're not going to attach a lot to it and it's not going to carry a lot of weight, then you can maybe go with something like just a construction weight acetate. So to start to assemble my two outer ring pieces, I am just going to glue those glue tabs together. Make sure that when you glue it together, it folds down completely flat. And so you can see here, when it folds flat, it's still going to fit inside my card base by quite a wide margin, because it could have gone a little bit bigger. But every step along the way, you'll notice that I constantly double check, is this going to fit into my card? And that's what I definitely would recommend you doing, is always double checking that things are going to fit. Now, we need to attach two of those glue tabs to what will ultimately be the bottom of these circular rings. I'm aiming to center this as best I can. And the reason why I say that you can go more narrow than the 1 inch wide that I did was because this is going to prevent your circle from really bending, because there's that extra bit of cardstock. So it'll be a little bit straight where these glue tabs are attached. So if you want a more rounded edge at the very front most and the very back most of your pop-up stand, then you can go a little bit more narrow. But this will work just fine. And so you can kind of, I think it looks okay actually even at 1 inch, but I think if I were to do it again, I would probably go with 5/8 of an inch wide by 1 inch and then score it and fold it in half. Then with these pieces, this is that platform support base that's going to go inside the circular ring. So what I need to do is I need to attach this pop-up stand, my acetate. This is strong acetate. This is construction weight. And again, how strong and how sturdy this needs to be just really depends on how much you plan to attach to it and how heavy that's ultimately going to be. Now, what I did, although what I would recommend you doing, what I did was just eyeballed the center of this. But what I would recommend you doing is if you actually cut that support piece to be more narrow than your circle, then what you should do is hold your circle up to this support platform, and where you put the slit, give yourself a little mark so that you know where to attach that acetate stand, because that acetate stand needs to slip through that slit that we made in the circle. So you want to make sure that it all lines up as perfectly as possible. And so I would definitely recommend kind of transferring the location of that slit, especially if you eyeball things like I do. If you just hold it up to your support stand here, then you can just transfer, do a pencil mark right through the slit and transfer that location, and that way you can make sure that your pop-up stand actually is where it needs to be. And then you can glue those two pieces together. And again, I'm doing a little bit of a dry fit, making sure everything fits, everything is where it needs to be. As I go step by step. That way I don't get too far down the road and only to find out that things aren't gonna fit together the way that I expect. If you want to decorate the inside of your card, now is the time to do it before you start gluing your pop-up mechanism to the inside of your card. So I'm going to add some red solid color cardstock to this, and I cut it as two separate panels because you don't want to put anything across the center fold line of your card. So I cut these panels so that there's a 1/8 of an inch white border that will be visible along the left, the bottom, and the right edge. So basically on the three edges that are not against the fold. This piece of red cardstock is butt up as close to the fold as possible without going over it. So for this 6x6 card, it ends up being cut at 5 7/8 by 5 3/4. And that has this really nice effect of having that 1/8 inch border across the fully opened inside of the card. You'll see a little bit of that white line in the center. That's the score line, and you don't want to cross over that because if you did, then it's not going to fold down nicely for you. And I am skipping all of the parts where I assembled the small die of the month, which is what I used for this. If you want to see all of that, then catch my flip video. What I wanted to do in this video was go a little bit more slowly in the construction of this specifically, and oh, I'm still so sad that I didn't miter the corners on these glue tabs. It's very disappointing. But essentially what you want to do is you want to tuck, this is the structure that's going to support the circle. Now, what I would recommend when you glue these two pieces together is don't put glue all the way to the edge of the fold. Give yourself a little bit of wiggle room because this all needs to fold down, and it's so many layers of cardstock at this point because you've got the card base, I've got the red layer of cardstock, and then on top of that, this craft card. So there needs to be a little bit of play there where the two, because if you glue the two pieces together where the fold is exactly sealed right up against it, it actually might not allow you to open fully or close fully your card. So I would just leave about 1/8 of an inch, put glue along that bottom border about 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge, and that's going to give your mechanism enough play to be able to open fully and close fully. And so I thankfully, because from the top, when you put your circle piece on to the support piece, it is very visible with the corners of those glue tabs poking out. So that's actually another good reason to cut your support piece so that it's not the full width of your circle. You could maybe, if you forgot to trim or miter your glue tabs in that scenario, it probably wouldn't be visible because it's not the full width of your circle. But I had the unfortunate combination of making this support piece the full diameter of my circle, and I forgot to miter those glue tabs. So learn from me, always miter your glue tabs. It always ends up being a nicer finish. So now with the outer ring. So I've got my circular piece, it's not actually attached to anything right now. I've only just slipped it through that slot. And otherwise, it's not actually attached to the platform. It's just sitting on top of the platform. What I want to do is glue, I have 2 remaining glue tabs, those small little glue tabs. So I want to glue half of it to the underside of my circular platform. And then what I'll do is then on the other half of those glue tabs, I want to glue them to my outer ring. And so the folded edge of the glue tabs, that is going to meet up or line up with the top of the outer ring. And you want to make sure that everything is nice and flat and that it all folds down flat, that all of the all of the edges where there are folds, all of that lines up with the fold line of the card base. And then also I learned that don't write on any of the pieces because some of it's actually visible when you when you close and open it. Not terribly, but if somebody were to really peek under there, they might be able to see it. Okay, so then you've got 2 glue tabs left that are not attached yet. Those are the glue tabs those were the first glue tabs that I mentioned. They were attached to the bottom of that circular ring. So now is the time to put glue just on the glue tab and then fold your card shut on top of it. Every time I make a pop-up card, because the expectation is that it should close completely, whenever I'm adhering things down, I always close my card to adhere it down, because then it guarantees that later it will fold down completely flat, because those glue tabs will just find where they're supposed to go. So as I mentioned, I kind of cut and left out all of the bits where I was decorating and putting together the small die of the month. So I'm just gonna skip and just leave this little bit of finishing touches in. If you want to see everything about how I attached this actually ends up being a dancing platform pop-up too. So you can check out my Spellbinders video, my flip video, if you want to see how all of that came together. But I hope that this has been useful so that you can see that these pop-up mechanisms, they're really cool, they're really fun. If you get the specialty die set, you probably won't regret it because it does make it a lot easier, a lot faster. There's no guesswork, there's no taking a sliver off here and a sliver off there. So it is a lot easier, but I will say that having now done this, because this is the first time I've done this where I completely customized it end to end, it's not that much of a mystery anymore, and I like the idea of being able to make these in whatever size I want. So that's really powerful, I think, whenever you learn how a mechanism works and you understand conceptually what all the moving pieces are. You can see here I only use one die. I only use the circle die. So imagine you can make this as a shaped card if you wanted to just make a really big version of this. You could do this in whatever size that you want. Really, your only limit is whatever size circle you can cut. So I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope it's useful to you. If you've always wanted to make one of these, you didn't want to maybe invest in one of those specialty die sets, hopefully you'll give this a go. And if you do, let me know in the comments below, and join my Facebook group. I run a Facebook community group. The link to it is always in all of my videos. So I hope you'll join. And if you make one of these, I hope you post and share to my group, because I would love to see your makes, whether you're making this or anything else. I do hope you'll join me over there in my Facebook group. And we have a really fun community there, and we organize, my moderators and I organize a lot of crafty fun activities, and so I would love for you to pop on over there if you aren't already a member. So that about wraps up my card. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll link at the very end of this video to the full flip video in case you missed that one and you want to see how I put all of the other pieces together. Thanks for joining me on this one, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.